Right. Good afternoon, New Jersey. My name is Dan Wong. I am a retired attorney and former judge. I'm also on the National Board of Directors for the Center for Civic Education. I live in Boise, Idaho, and I'm excited to listen to your testimony and presentation today.
Hello, New Jersey. My name is Maria Garnett. I live in Richmond, Virginia, and I work in state government. I'm a policy advisor for Virginia's Department of Criminal Justice Services. Prior to that, I served as a nonpartisan policy analyst and evaluator of government program performance for the Virginia General Assembly. This is my third year of involvement with We the People, and I am so excited to be here with you today.
Good afternoon. My name is Petra Al-Sufi. I am an Outreach and Partnerships Manager at the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, a research and education organization that researches American Muslims and other faith communities. I'm also on the board of the Michigan Center for Civic Education. And many years ago, I was in your place as a student participant of We the People program. So this is me coming from the future to tell you you'll make it. Breathe. Enjoy the experience, and I hope it continues to encourage you to stay active in civic education and public service.
So would you please introduce yourselves and your teacher, and please tell us the name of your school.
Hi, my name is Sana Ali, and I'm a senior at East Brunswick High School.
Hi, my name is Jordan Baker. I am also a senior at East Brunswick High School.
Hi, my name is Nidhi Joshi, and as you could guess, I'm also a senior at East Brunswick High School.
Hi, I'm Rahul Malhotra, and I'm also a senior at East Brunswick High School, and this is our teacher, Mr. Marjorie.
Good afternoon.
All right. All right, thank you. So let's get right to it. I'll read the question for Unit 6, which is question number 2. President Dwight D. Eisenhower said, "We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. Do you agree or disagree? Why? What disagreements did the founders have about a standing army, and are they relevant today? To what extent should there be an international U.S. military presence?" You may begin.
We agree with President Eisenhower that the military-industrial complex has unwarranted power and influence, with the revolving door in its lobbying, costly budget, and wasteful programs. To fix the ineffectiveness of previous presidents' executive orders on lobbying, we should pass the Close the Revolving Door Act of 2019, which increases staff lobbying restrictions and the penalty for violating the Lobbying Disclosure Act. In 2016, defense contractors hired 645 former senior government officials to be lobbyists, senior executives, and board members. Taxpayer money is being spent on a large military budget, but could be better used on healthcare, welfare, education, and infrastructure. The Peterson Foundation said that the US spent $732 billion on defense in 2019, while the next 10 highest spending countries totaled $726 billion.
The founders disagreed on a standing army due to its cost, relation to liberty, whether militia suffice, and international overreach. Federalist Paper number 29 called a standing army expensive and burdensome. Explaining its threat to liberty, Richard Henry Lee stated, "A standing army constantly terminated in the destruction of liberty." The founders believed a standing army would be an overreach of power. George Washington supported a standing army, but his farewell address warned the US to be wary of international involvement. The argument of a standing army's cost is still relevant today, but arguments about relation to liberty, international overreach, and whether militia suffice are no longer of concern. Our military budget exceeded $934 billion in 2020. According to the US military's 2015 Joint Chiefs of Staff, a standing army protects our nation through military operations to defend the homeland and build security globally. US global leadership makes a standing army essential to world peace, like US naval presence in the South China Sea protecting Taiwan. America is 3.8 million square miles, with presences in nations further away like Spain, needing larger and greater forces.
We believe a U.S. military presence is vitally important because of our role as a global peacekeeper, genocide, speed in action, and its use for delivering aid and education. Through counterbalancing, the U.S. helped avoid foreign conflicts in the Strait of Hormuz, where U.S. naval forces kept Iran from shutting the strait down. The Navy claims the presence demonstrates the United States' capabilities to defend against any threat at any time. During the Bosnian genocide in 1995, Bosnian Serbs refused incentives like suspension of UN economic sanctions. The US and NATO used an airstrike to get Bosnia to end the humanitarian crisis. We should use proactive force for the genocide of the Rohingya Muslims after 9 years of economic sanctions with little results, similar to Bosnia.
Despite the necessity of a US military presence, it can be used incorrectly due to unwarranted violence, the power of other nations, and preemptive attacks. We must be wary since local resentment over foreign military bases can linger for generations. Since the end of World War II, Okinawans have feared US military officers because of sexual assault and murder cases. In 2016, a 20-year-old woman's body was discovered after she'd been raped and murdered by a US military employee. In 2021, the US declared China's encampment of the Uyghur Muslims a genocide. To avoid the threat of war, we believe diplomacy is a path we must follow through actions like boycotting the Olympics and economic talks. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I think everyone would agree that the diplomacy should be utilized first, but what do you say to those that you have to back up diplomacy with force and might, and that's the reason we should have an extensive military presence overseas? What's your response to that?
I think that it's generally an okay thing for us to be doing. I mean, we see with our presence in the South China Sea that as much as China might look at us and call our bluff, it's important for us to have our presence recognized to help protect nations who might not be able to defend themselves.
I believe that diplomacy with the threat of force should be the last solution we encounter. For example, in our speech, we mentioned how in Bosnia they refused economic sanctions and then had led us to use military presence as a diplomatic factor. So I believe that first, diplomacy should be met without the use of force or presence.
So other than passing legislation at the congressional level to put stricter guardrails around this revolving door that you talked about, what other steps can be taken to limit the influence of the military industrial complex on congressional appropriations and military decision making?
I think we should honestly, not even with legislation, start going to our local representatives. In states like California and Virginia, those two states happen to be the highest profiting in the defense sector. If we asked our local representatives in those states to start actively advocating against companies like Lockheed Martin and preventing their unwarranted influence within Congress, it would be a great step forward against the current investment that these companies are placing in those states, letting them have more access to Congress.
I actually believe that we should be looking at President Biden's ethics executive order, in which he stated that you must wait 2 years before joining the defense sector. And I do believe that we all agree that instead of 2 years, it should be made to 4 years in order to mitigate the amount of people joining the defense sector.
So I'm hearing you talk about, going to our legislator in advocating, which there is an assumption that citizens are aware and understand what the issue is and what their role in addressing it. To couple that with the fact that in the U.S., it's frowned upon to talk negatively about the U.S. military, you're seen as unpatriotic if you do so. So my question is, what are we assuming that the citizenry is educated, and if they're not, what can be done to have an informed citizenry about the U.S. military, its role, its budget, so forth, and how you could address it? And two, how would you the words of the citizens against the lobbying of these companies that are creating thousands of jobs, at the end of the day, who would the legislator listen to?
Well, I personally feel like our current citizens are not informed enough about our current military and the MIC, and the influence that defense contractors have on the military. So I think it's really important to include mandatory civics classes into our public education systems so that we get a more informed population, especially as they start to turn 18 years old. That duty of a citizen starts to come into play with voting.
And going off of Needy here, I think we can take this program as an excellent example. This We the People program in East Brunswick is considered a civics class for us. And here, I mean, with this question, I've learned so much about the military industrial complex that I never even knew before. And I think civics class and learning about this, especially with even us as seniors, we're going to college and we're going to be able to vote in the next election. We need to be able to learn more about it through civics class.
And to answer the latter half of your question as to whether or not a legislator would listen to its citizens versus profit, I like to have faith in our institutions. I mean, the founders originally said that when we assumed the soldier, we did not lay aside the citizen. When we talk about the military, it should not be frowned upon for us to criticize our government, because that's what underlies and unites us: liberty, democracy, and discussion of what our government's actually doing. I'd like to have faith in our legislators that those who we choose to elect are the ones who are going to listen to the people that they've been elected by.
I actually disagree with Jordan. She brought up the example of Virginia and California before. The politicians in those states are actually profiting off listening to defense contractors and things like that. So I believe if they stop listening to them, not only will it hurt their re-election, it will also hurt their reputation. I believe that for those reasons, they are more likely to not listen to the people.
So Eisenhower's quote regarding the military industrial complex was 60 years ago. And obviously we've had a lot of technological changes, even in the last 10 or 20 years. How, if at all, can we use technology to reduce the US military presence overseas? Any thoughts?
Well, there's one aspect to technology that we can look at. For example, during the negotiations of the Iran nuclear deal, the use of technology and monitoring the production of weapons was used, and thus would negate the use of military presence to monitor the production of weapons. So I think using technology to monitor weapon production in other countries where we've made pacts with them, like the Iran nuclear deal, and the negotiating of the Iran nuclear deal is really important.
I think we can also look to the idea of what happened in Somalia in 1993 with Black Hawk Down. Our issue was that we became too invested, and we ended up losing American lives due to our overactive involvement. But with the use of Air Force and air travel, like F-35s or drone strikes, we're better able to avoid risking American lives without having them actually present.
So I'm thinking back to this idea of, the threat to liberty from the military is no longer a concern. I contrast that with the image of those National Guard members standing in front of the Lincoln Memorial and the tear gas in Lafayette Square last summer. Do you think that anything needs to be done to ensure that the military is actually following the law on not acting against US citizens? And if so, what should those steps be?
I think when we talk about the National Guard and as it does function as our military, we should also look at January 6th. They actually ended up defending the Capitol and defending our government. I think as much as we may be suspicious of our police forces and our National Guard, we should also look to the fact that they are technically there to protect us and break up conflicts like the riot that happened on January 6th. I think with things like better training, like here in East Brunswick, we've asked all of our police departments.
All right, I'm sorry, that's time.
May I continue my statement?
No, sorry.
Well, we're being real strict this time. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. I enjoyed your presentation. You are obviously well prepared. I expect nothing less from New Jersey. Well prepared, articulate, able to express your views, support your views with evidence. I enjoyed it very much. I enjoyed your answers to our cross-examination questions because our cross-examination questions do tend to be complex and hard, quite frankly. And I thought you handled them very well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would just like to echo what my colleague Dan just said. You know, a 4-person team is kind of right there in the middle, right? Like there's enough people that it is something of a challenge to make sure you can equally balance your time across one another. And I really liked that you all made sure to answer questions in our, question and answer period. I also thought that, when you did offer a different perspective than something one of your colleagues said, you did so respectfully and in a way that was still grounded in evidence. So keep up that excellent work. One thing I did notice is that, when you were talking about different policies that you were advocating or possible solutions to some of the things that we talked about, you could have taken it a little bit further in circling back to, constitutional theory or, something else that would make sure we knew it wasn't just you thinking out loud about how to solve this problem, but connecting back to what you've learned. That makes for a stronger argument. But again, I really enjoyed this discussion with all of you. I am excited for your futures as college students and for your state and our country as having you as future leaders. So thank you.
Yes, so to echo what my colleagues have said, I think you did really, really well. Don't be discouraged at time right now. It doesn't really impact that you weren't able to finish the statement. It literally happened with every other team today and yesterday. I agree that, I really appreciated when you took different positions. You were not shy to take different positions, were respectful and supported that. And the fact that you were able to to make a statement in support it. So like when I asked about the citizens versus representative, you stated you have faith in the system. So that was very that's taken a position and stated it, and then your colleague was able to provide a different view. So that's very helpful. I think you guys were good. So good luck with the rest of the competition.
Yeah.
Thank you all so
And-
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.